Hello, this is Janet Gowan welcoming you to Love Letters Live. And today's guest is, by my invitation, and I thought wonderful idea, a return guest. Larry Strauss is an author. You've got 5 books to your credit, right?
5 novels
5 novels. Thank you.
and some other stuff.
And is a teacher. And I am so touched whenever I hear somebody's a teacher. I have questions and I have a lot to say because it is a very important career. And we hear that all the time, how important teachers are. And let's talk about how important they are for starters. You start.
Um, well, yeah, I mean, we're learning isn't just something you do in school. It's something you do for your whole life. And unfortunately, some of us get turned off to learning. We get the idea that we're not good at learning. And some of that is because teachers are overwhelmed. They're, badly trained. Whatever the reason, it can have a profound impact. I know as a parent, and I know as somebody who talks to a lot of parents, just how awful it is when your kid has a teacher and it's not working.
Okay, let me ask you something. Just for what level do you teach?
I teach high school, and right now, this year I have almost entirely older high school, like seniors and juniors. I have a few freshmen, but I used to teach sophomores. Anyway, it switched around, but so it's really young adults. There, many of them turn 18 in my class.
Do you have a preference?
I find the older kids easier to teach.
Do you?
But I miss the sophomores now that I don't teach them. They were, they're a little more challenging.
I'm asking that. For quite a while, I was tutoring in algebra and geometry and English writing skills. But so many kids are afraid of math.
Yes.
And I'll never use it, and I don't have to do it. And I actually found I really like teaching the younger ones or people who hadn't had any experience yet to get in there before the damage was done, because personally, I don't think you can have much more fun sitting down than doing math.
Yeah, I think if you have the right teacher,
right. So
and it's not, and it isn't just the teacher. It isn't just it's the system, because the teachers get browbeaten with test data. And I know the math teachers at where I teach are there, at least under the previous leadership, we have a new principal, but previously they were always being, dismissed it was always being implied that somehow they were failing because the kids' math scores weren't high.
Oh, okay. So I have something to share about that. I knew a young woman who in high school, she was terrible at math, very smart girl, and she was just awful at math. And they finally put her into a remedial math class, which was taught with such creativity and was such fun. And she just soared right to the top. And so they put her back in her regular class where she was bored and confused again. Now, why isn't there some standard all across the board for every subject, some standard of teaching where it's imperative that you have got to have fun doing it?
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
Or go sell shoes somewhere that you don't belong in.
I can show you, but again, right. If the people in charge, if that was their imperative too, if the administrators were judged on how much fun the students are having learning, how much they're learning, how enjoyable they are, how much they enjoy learning. If the superintendent of the school system was judged by that, if it's just the teachers and everybody above them is still, using the metrics of test data, then it's not going to work. But
well, I'm talking about something else, though. Something's got to shine through the teacher.
Yeah, I don't know. I can only tell you for me, I love the subject I teach. And so consequently, I love teaching it. And if students aren't enjoying it, then I know there's something wrong with how I'm doing it. I've either picked something for them. I've either picked a work that's maybe a little inaccessible to them, and I'm trying to go too fast at it, or I've given them an assignment to write and I haven't properly prepared them. I mean, if they're not, not to say that the what high school students do is there's a negotiation that goes on. They come into class and they don't want to do anything that particular day, but they want to succeed. My students anyway, they want to succeed. They want to be prepared for college. They want to be successful. So, they don't really want me to give in to that. They want me to push back, but still, they don't want, they feel stressed out. Most of them are first generation students. Many of them have jobs. They're doing college applications. A lot of them on their own. They don't have parents who can help them with it. And so they're, and they're taking a lot of difficult classes. So they are reasonably stressed out. And unfortunately, the joy of learning is often taken away just by the stress of succeeding. If they're so focused on the grades and what do I have to do to get a grade, and that there isn't that joy. And when I confront them about,
I remember actually when I was in college, freshman, and the teacher was really on a roll. He was just having a wonderful time, and it was just infectious. And and one young man in class raised his hand and he said yes, and he said, "Will that be on the final exam?"
Yeah, of course.
And the guy threw him out of class.
Yeah. Wow.
Right.
And I would never throw a kid out of class for that, because they've been trained. The whole system has trained them to ask that question. Don't blame the kid. Throw the school off campus for that question. We make it about the grades.
What do you remember? What do you remember as your earliest experience with a teacher, like nursery school, kindergarten? And
I remember teachers being very nice, very warm, early on. I mean, I don't remember liking school though, and I don't remember being very good at it. But I remember the teachers seemed okay. And then I kind of remember when teachers started to become mean, and demanding.
How old were you, and how did that take form? Because I remember a couple of vicious ones.
Third grade, I had a third grade teacher who was, but she wasn't. She was just very strict. She was strict. She wasn't mean. She was just strict. And but I don't remember not liking her. I don't remember not liking a teacher probably till high school, and then it got really bad. Like, I'm fighting with teachers.
With your teacher?
Like really bad. Yeah, like cussing them out.
What evoked that in you?
What's that?
What evoked that in you?
Oh, I just thought he was petty. I just thought he was being petty, and I mean, even to this day, I can remember. His name was Mr. Peterson. He was a math teacher, and I can sometimes feel the impulse to become like him in moments, and resisting that impulse to do that petty, using the teacher's power over a student. Although I must say, I haven't felt that way at all this year, like zero. Good. Since, being away for a year and a half and then coming back. Nothing really bothers me very much that the students do.
How are you bound to curriculum requirements? Has that changed a lot? I mean, that's a big issue, isn't it?
I'm very fortunate. I'm a very fortunate teacher, and I the first to point that out. Not every teacher can do what I do. I've been in the same school for 30 years. When I came to that school, it was a last chance school for kids who had been kicked out or dropped out, and many of them were in the criminal justice system.
So was that a continuation school, or was it just?
It was. Yeah, I mean, it was under the banner. Yeah, we were part of that system, and excuse me. And and I pushed academics pretty hard on the kids. But it was always in fun way. It was like every kid had to have a path to success, no matter how far behind they got. You
What
can't.
about expectations?
And well, um, yeah, well, but the expectations has to be on the individual kid. You can't
Right.
have one. Yeah, the expectation is that you're going to engage and try, and then, whatever. I mean, each kid you have to have a goal for each student, uh, that's realistic. But anyway, I've been there, so I paid my dues at a time when nobody in the system cared what our test scores were. They only cared that, nobody killed anybody on our campus, that, our attendance was
But yes, that's important.
okay. And, you know, really, like, if we didn't have a disaster, we
Mhm.
were okay. And so by the time all this testing, the tyranny of all this testing came around, I was an experienced veteran, national board certified. I had a reputation. Taught, many members of the same family, uh, uh, and I was extremely popular with students in the school.
Okay,
And
so
so,
wait, just stop it. What made you popular? This is important for teachers to listen to this.
because I cared about students more than anything. Like, I let them know, and I proved it that I cared about
How do you prove that?
them. When a kid gets in a fight and he's going to be kicked out, you go and stand up for him, and you yell at the principal and you say, let him stay. If he gets another fight, you can fire me. Like, you or in one case, you break up a bunch of boys fighting and you make an agreement not to tell anybody.
Mhm.
Some of it is subversive. Um, you teach kids based on their interest. You make it fun. You find ways to make school feel less like school, where you're
Okay,
learning.
so can you describe that? Like, what does school feel like at its worst, and how do you make it less like school?
Well, at its worst, it's PowerPoint memorization,
Oh, yeah.
quiz, test. The
Mhm.
test has nothing to do with what's in the book, or like this arbitrary test to show kids what they don't know. Um, when school stops feeling like school is when you're doing projects, for one thing. Like, I started a school newspaper my first year, and that became, our classroom became like a newsroom. Although, realistically, some of the kids are so conditioned to not doing anything unless they have a very specific structured assignment every second, and then they drift. So it's work. It's hard work, but
That's going to be hard for you and for the students when you may be the only person who's proud of them for what they have done.
yeah. But if at least there's somebody, and
Yeah.
that means something to them. But once, and just being, kids are bored, and they hate being bored.
Right.
And so, even if just the class is fun, I mean, just being funny. And not everybody can be funny in a class setting. I understand that. I mean, I work with teachers. I've mentored a bunch of teachers, and I don't tell them all be funny,
Well,
because
what
they
can you
can't
not
all.
teach? I mean, I don't mean what can you not teach your students. There's some things that are just not teachable to teachers. You can't make a person funny.
No, no.
You can't make a person sensitive. You can make
Right.
them react.
No, you have to. I think teaching teacher and mentoring teachers, which I've done, I think you have to approach it the same way you approach kids. And that is that success is not all the same. They have to find, or like teaching writing, you find your own voice. You got to find your voice as a writer. You can't write like, you can't be told there's one way to do it and this is how to do it. You got to find your way. Now, that said, imitation is a very powerful tool. I know, as a writer, I had a writing mentor, and he would say, well, how would George Bernard Shaw write this scene, or how would John Irving write this, or how,
So you would actually give assignments and have somebody do a writing in the,
well, like I'm teaching creative
general-
writing right now, and we read a variety of stories by a variety of authors, and and I won't say to everybody, okay, imitate this Tobias Wolff story, imitate this.
but can you say write something
Buckets.
as if you are that person?
But right. Well, what I'll say is like, well, I'll pick from 5 authors. We'll read 5, and then I'll go, well, pick the one you want to imitate, and
Yeah.
and write it the way you imagine they would write it. And of course, it doesn't come out as I say to them, this is very different than plagiarism. Imitation is flattery, and it's not going to be plagiarism. It's going to be original. It's going to be you.
But in somebody else's style.
Yeah. So I think that's why I think for young teachers, the ideal thing would be to be at a school with a lot of great experienced teachers who all have different styles, and then you find the one that you think you could do. When I was a student teacher, I worked with 2 women.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Miss Powledge and Miss Sands. Miss Sands was this. They were both very successful teachers. Like they were both really good. But Miss Sands, I couldn't do it like her. She was this very sweet, nurturing. And she had some rough kids from who had rough backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just her sweetness just lulled them into.
Oh, that's.
But I couldn't be that person. That was just not in me. So Miss Powledge was a little bit of a wise ass, and a little tougher around the edges. Like she loved them, but she wasn't sweet about it. And so I remember when I observed Miss Sands, I was like, I don't think I could do this. And then I went and saw Miss Powledge, and I realized, like, okay, I could do this. I could do it the way she's doing it. I could do that. So
that was kind of permission to be yourself in that way.
Right. I mean, I wasn't her, but it let me know, like, okay, that can work.
How long do you think you have in a classroom? It's the first day of school. How long do you think you have to win over a class?
I don't know, because I mean, I usually win them over the first day. I mean, it's not hard. But
I agree that it's not if you know what to do. But
I have to say, like, part of it is, I feel bad saying this publicly, but part of it is that, part of it is that the bar is kind of low. Like, the teacher, when I was teaching 10th grade, the 9th grade teacher was just, the students just disliked his class so much. He was so rigid. I mean, he is so rigid, and I see him trying to be different, but they get to my class, and I didn't really have to do much to win them over.
Just the relief of not being in his class probably helped.
Yeah, I mean,
let me ask you something. What is required to become a teacher? So you're in college, you decide you want to become a teacher for some reason. What are the requirements that get you to this position of being a teacher?
Well, right now it's not much because there's an acute teacher shortage. But under normal times, it's like a year. When I was doing it, it was a year of teacher training, which is mostly useless, but which everybody knows. Now I think it might even be more than a year. But a lot of teachers, my daughter's a high school art teacher. She got an emergency credential, and then she was able to get it. She was able to teach full time while she was getting her credential. So it actually took longer than a year because she was, doing it while she was working. A lot of people do that. It used to be you could only do that in hard to staff subjects like math and science and special ed. Now I think it must be open to anybody because there are not enough teachers. I mean, at the beginning of the school year, we were short. Everybody was short. I wrote an op-ed in USA Today.
You actually had like classrooms that didn't have a teacher walk into them?
Yeah. So yeah, we had a math position unfilled. So the other math teachers were just filling in on their off periods. and then you'd have substitutes. But the problem was there aren't enough substitutes either. It's like really bad. After the 2008 financial crisis, when schools budgets were slashed,
Mhm.
uh, young teachers got laid off, and a lot of them became embittered to the profession because they put in all this work, and many of them were really good teachers working hard, and they were just sent off. And then people coming out of credential programs couldn't get jobs, and so a lot of people stopped seeing teaching as a viable option. And now we have this terrible shortage. We have all these old teachers like me who are nearing retirement or retiring, and there's nobody to take their place.
There's another issue that I just want to know what you think. Teachers, okay, first of all, teaching is an art. And I remember growing up, parents who, I think we talked about this for a minute last time, parents who would encourage their children who were excellent singers or actors or whatever it is they wanted to do, athletes, they wanted to follow some profession that was hard to follow. Mm-hmm. And I remember parents saying, well, get your teaching credentials so you'll have something to fall back on.
Yeah.
And the under message is when you fail at this, but to get a teaching credential.
Or until you succeed at it, which is the more realistic.
Well, okay, so that's, oh, yes, okay. But that wasn't the message. The message was, you're not going to earn your living at this very fine art. So become a teacher. So you had teachers who did not want to be teachers. And it was very clear they didn't. And how do you put a stop to that? I mean, is there some point at which you can say to somebody who's applying to be a teacher, this isn't for you, go do something else?
Well, yeah, you can, but
nobody do it now.
You theoretically could, and they do. I mean, when I was a student teacher, the two mentors I had, who I talked about earlier, they told me that the last student teacher they'd worked with, they had not recommended her for credential. That she was not competent not fit to be a teacher. But she just never quite got it, which had surprised me because I thought they would say that about me. I was so bad at that point. But no, the only way you could solve this, the reason they don't do it more is there aren't enough teachers. As long as there's a shortage.
But when I was growing up, there were enough teachers.
Right, but there were enough teachers but there weren't enough good teachers, right?
Because all these other people got in, so they could just have something to fall back on.
Right, because the system could not be, I mean, the simple explanation is an economic one, which is if you paid teachers, if the starting salary was $150,000 a year, mm-hmm. then people who were not actors and musicians would, somebody would be deciding between medical school, law school, and getting a teaching credential as three equal opportunities, equal choices. And so you'd get some of the best and brightest. And then from there, you could select how many of these best and brightest can be good teachers.
Oh, okay. So you can really,
it's like if you're, you could be brilliant student, but if you don't have the coordination to be a surgeon, you're not going to become a surgeon. But at least the medical school gets to pick from the top. Yeah. The law schools get to pick from the top. The teaching credential programs don't get to pick from the top. They get some people. They get some brilliant people who just really want to be teachers.
Who are so devoted.
Yeah, one of my son's classmates in high school. She's a straight A student. Got into many top universities. She wants to be a teacher. Mm-hmm. Because she loves it. She's always wanted to be a teacher. She wants to be a teacher. She could go to law school. She could probably go to Harvard Business School. I mean, she's that smart. She happens to want to be a teacher. But you can't rely on that if you want to have a core of really great teachers. Then you would have to pay that, or at least maybe you don't have to start that high. I don't know, but I just don't know if the economics how much would that cost? Like, where would that money come from? There's so many there's so many public school teachers. If you raise the salaries by, $100,
On the other hand, but it would make sense though that you would save money at the other end
yes.
as a state or a city,
Oh yeah.
because you would have fewer kids on the street getting into trouble because they'd like to be in class and they'd see the value of
Yeah.
sticking with it. So you save money at the other end. It's like
absolutely.
preventative medicine.
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, I could tell you, I was actually looking, before we got on, I was looking for a letter from one of my former students.
Oh, I want to talk. Okay, let's hear it.
But I didn't find it, but I could, tell you, it was all about, this was a guy who had been incarcerated before high school, at a very young age. He was convicted of a very serious crime, and he was trying to turn his life around. Mm-hmm. And I and a few other teachers were able to help him do that. And if you consider, if he'd spent 10 years of the last 20, wait, how long has he been up? He's been out of high school 25 years. If he'd spent 10 of the last 25 years incarcerated, mm-hmm. That'd be like $1.5 million.
Oh, that's a lot more expensive than hiring a teacher for a higher salary. Yes.
Right. So if you figure you can really, I mean, and that's the argument for all this stuff. Like, cut the prison budget, cut the, mm-hmm. cut the, and if you, and not just education, but the social services, and create a world where kids don't fall through the cracks.
Now but I want to, before, because we're limited in time, but I want you to talk about, you had talked last time we talked outside of our taping about a student of yours who is he still incarcerated and trying to prove innocence? Yeah. And you've been writing letters. Mm-hmm. Talk about that, because this is so important that you get to stay connected. You say, learning goes on outside of the classroom. And so your role with this student and others continue.
Yeah, I mean, I send them books too.
Yes.
To read, and and he reads them. We go back and forth about it. Yeah, I mean, it's a very sad story. He's innocent until proven guilty, but he spent 5 years in jail. Right. And he's a young man of color, an immigrant, and the system just, the evidence against him is very, very flimsy. Basically, it's based on a plea bargain testimony of somebody who is guilty of a crime. Basically, named him to get a lesser sentence.
So connected with him through letter writing and.
But he was in my class about 10 years ago. He graduated in 2014, so he was in my class that year. And when I found out that this had happened to him, I asked for the address and started corresponding.
Yeah. So you have letters from him also.
Oh yeah, I have dozens of letters from him.
This is very nice. This will be, well, so important for you to be able to look at when you're an old man, and for him, if he gets out and gets to resume a life, he'll have that encouragement. San Quentin has a wonderful education department. I'm sure you know about it. And so these are people, when you talk about the importance of teaching and what it does for your inner elegance, to be educated, to be an educated person. These are people, many of whom they're not going anywhere, but they're getting their high school and college degrees in prison for the joy of being.
It's not just to have a career; it's to be it's to become a better person, to become, and for life to have more meaning.
Yes.
No, absolutely.
Glad you said that part, because that's so critical.
Oh yeah, no, and I think this young man has, I think he's realized that. I mean, I know he has bad days. He's been put in solitary confinement, but I know his, what he writes to me, he's just, it just amazes me how he's able to stay optimistic and
oh yes,
and not just give up and become bitter and cynical and angry.
Now that's because, I mean, he gets to look at a life eventually outside of prison and making something good of his life with
Yeah,
your letters of encouragement. Okay.
I hope so.
Thank you for making that point. Thank you for doing this with me. I would so like to see a day where only people who were good at teaching, they used to say, what did they used to say? It was horribly insulting. Those who can do and those who can't teach.
Right, but that's right. If you believe that, if
It's like
that's
I'm
the
in the
system,
twilight.
then
I'm in the twilight zone. When
right, we're telling our kids like, we're throwing our kids in with a bunch of losers. Like it doesn't make any sense.
Well, and
And
it also doesn't make any sense because teaching is its own art. I mean, there are people who are teaching who shouldn't be, and they're brilliant at their subjects, but they can't get it across.
yeah, and
Okay.
there are people who aren't good at any of it, and they have jobs because we don't value teachers enough. We don't value the kids enough. I mean, we're talking about public school, and mostly low income kids, and the value is, the values is not there for
Okay,
them.
but I like what you said is just so important. You don't hear that too much. You do hear people talking about, society doesn't value our teachers enough to pay them well and get the best. But I like your point about the underlying message there is we don't care enough about our children, evidently, to get them the best.
No, it's about the right. It is about the kid. And actually, I wrote one of my nonfiction books called "Students First and Other Lies,"
Uh-huh.
because everybody in the system pays lip service to that idea. It's about the kids. It's about the kids, but nobody really does right by the kids. Who doesn't work with the kids?
Institutionally, they don't. I mean, they're
Yeah, I mean, no, anyone who's not in a classroom.
right.
It's like you get that one step away from the kids, and the decisions are made, and they're made for the point of adults and careers and vanity and politics. It all starts at the level of politics, because the governor wants to say our schools are number 5 in the country, and my opponent when he came in, the
Oh,
schools
I
are
see.
number 8 in the country. They want numbers, and they don't care about kids. They care about the numbers, and you can manipulate numbers, and you can, but it's not. It's just the decisions are not. And if they did care about kids, they would give teachers more of a say, because we know what they need.
Right.
We're working with them. They would trust us, because the system does not trust us. During COVID, administrators and district officials were losing their minds because they had no choice but to trust us. They couldn't supervise us the way that they actually, there were principals that wanted us to be required to come into our school buildings early on in the pandemic and teach Zoom from our classroom so that they could watch us.
Oh,
And of course, the union wouldn't tolerate that because of teachers who had health risks and whatnot. I mean,
sure.
some of us wouldn't have minded. I wouldn't have minded putting a mask on and coming in and doing that alone in my room. But they had to trust us that we were doing our job, and it drove them nuts. And instead of it should be the other way around. It should be, why are we trusting you to spend the money?
You're not.
Why are we trusting? Yeah. That's why the whole thing is flipped. The whole thing, schools are the leadership structure of a school is based on the military and a corporation. There's somebody at the top, and then there's different levels all the way to the bottom. In a corporation, the bottom are the low wage workers, and their decisions aren't their job performance affects the company. But clearly, the people at the top, their decisions are more significant. But in a school, it doesn't work that way. If the lowest level is the teachers, that's upside down. It's backwards. Yes. We're the only ones who matter. We're the only ones whose work has any effect on the kids.
Okay, good for you.
The rest of you guys, the rest of you administrators, your only purpose in life is to make our job easier, is to make it so we can do our job. And I mean, there are other requirements of the school, but you keep us safe, get us what we need, keep track of the kids, but otherwise you should be taking orders from us.
Oh,
And
good for you.
that's what's wrong with the system.
Yes.
It should be like a law firm.
Yeah.
Law
And
firm,
and by the way, there is often, you often hear, I have friends who are teachers, and there is that principal teacher acrimony where they clearly have different goals. Thank you for doing this and for saying all of this. And maybe at some point there would be a way to get people to vote for people who have a different view of this. In other words, the people that you're saying who are at the top, or the people who are in government who just want to look good themselves, got their own agenda of looking good, they shouldn't be in office. Oh, I have a whole list of people who shouldn't be in office. That's another story.
Yeah,
okay.
There are. And part of it is politics attracts bad people, but also the job probably corrupts them too. So what I think though is if we modeled schools like a law firm where the partners were you have lawyers who are partners, and then you have somebody to run the business affairs who knows. Teachers should be running the school. You should have.
So that's a really interesting point, because you have to earn your way to being a partner in a law firm, and then you have clout. So you could do the same thing with teachers.
Yes, of course. And then the teachers, you should still, but if you should be running the school and still be in the classroom.
Oh,
now
yeah.
you should also have a CFO in the school, or CEO, whatever you want to call them, who orders supplies, who makes sure that they get ordered by the person who handles security and all that stuff. But that person should answer to the partners, the managing partners of the school.
I like that.
Experienced teachers who know what a school is, who know something about learning, who know something about kids.
That's a wonderful way to start something new at some point. That principle where teachers earn the right to become equal partners. Oh, let's work on this.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
I would love to be part of that. I don't know what I do. I can get kind of bossy, so maybe that would be helpful. Okay.
That's always helpful.
Thank you, dear, for doing this with me.
You're welcome.
There's so much more to be said, but at least we learned something, even though it could take hours longer. Okay, I'm going to say thank you, and maybe we'll get to talk about something else another time.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, dear. And until next time, this is Janet Gowan saying goodbye, and we'll see you later. Bye. Mwah. They're so lucky to have you. Yes.
Thank you.